This is my dear friend, Maxim Jago. I don't even remember where we met or how we met, but he's a futurist, which is kind of a funny title. But why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what does it mean to be a futurist?
I'm a futurist, a filmmaker, and author. I founded the Creativity Conference, where we explore creative thinking around the world. I love the themes of 2050 House. So over the last 10 years or so, I've worked in a number of different capacities. I've consulted for a lot of organizations. I've done a lot of keynotes. I had a thing that was bugging me. It rattled around my brain for years. You know, the Buddha said, apparently, they say, if you have attachments, it will lead to suffering. But the Buddha never said, don't have attachments. And so I've come to realize that suffering always brings gifts. And I had this thought that you're either here by accident, this is mechanical universe, the 4 laws of thermodynamics, and you're living your life. Be nice to animals, you know, be a friendly person, but that's it, good luck, enjoy yourself. But if you believe that there is a design, if you believe that there is a purpose to you being here, in an apparently infinite universe, your limitations must be, I think, logically part of that design. And the limitations that you experience, those characteristics that define who and what you are, include your attachments, those things that you get het up about and angry, furious, emotional, fascinated, passionate about, the things that you break and try to fix. And I started to wonder if maybe, if there is a purpose to life, it's to lean into those attachments, to embrace them. I've just written a philosophy book where my chapter on pain proposes that pain is not the problem. Pain is the messenger. You should listen to the message. And of course, if you have a cut on your arm, the pain is saying, hey, you should pay attention, you should clean that wound and dress it. But when it comes to emotional pain, the message is often much more nuanced. It might be that you're upset with somebody, but the pain tells you that they transgressed your boundaries, and that's a problem. So it's actually the message, not the origin of the message. So the shorter answer to the question is, in terms of me being a futurist, is my job is to estimate what's going to happen and be as accurate as possible. So I consult and I give keynotes and I write about things like artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, empathic AI, the future of education, autonomous robotics, the future of money, but most importantly, the future of humanity. And I am a pragmatic, optimistic realist. And part of the reason for me being an optimist is that if you accept sometimes that life's going to hurt, that the things you won't get. I think life's hard, but only because we want things, right? If you accept that sometimes there's going to be challenges, then only optimism remains, only potential remains. We could get into what the universe is and why it's doing what it's doing, but I think that's a discussion better held over tequila, and I believe we're coming back at 11:30 tonight, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, no, 2050 House is about culture, it's about investment, it's about innovation, and it's about, are we gonna make it to 2050? I don't know, what do you think? Are we gonna make it?
Here's my pragmatic, optimistic, realist take on it. If you look at the development of the technologies, actually a good starting point is the light bulb. You know, the light bulb became possible because about 5 other technologies evolved. So we had glass and the formation of precise metals and tungsten, electricity. These combinations of technologies combined, and then the light bulb was actually invented in multiple places all at once. It was a sort of inevitable outcome from the realization that we could establish these technologies. If you look at the pieces that are moving into place for our future, I would say that we are moving towards the next golden age for humanity. And I would say the key that unlocks that golden age is kindness. And people very often confuse kindness with weakness. They often feel like, sorry? Yeah, thank you for that distinction. I think that, you know, one of the challenges with philosophy is there's a sort of level of abstraction at which you're speaking. And at one level, it can be very hands-on. It's all about how we raise children and the perspective and the paradigm that we give them. At another level, it's one-to-one interactions. At another level, it's our relationship with ourselves. So I would agree with you, but I think in terms of relationships, in terms of culture, in terms of society, kindness is an expression of love. Kindness is doing what is right for the other, whether or not it's right for you. And we're moving towards an era now. But actually, let me add to that I think ultimately all of our feelings and our decisions are always driven by feelings, are rooted in either love or fear. And if you're honest with yourself, in the moment of making a choice, remember that your conscious mind doesn't make any choices, it just experiences them. So relax about going through logically and rationally through your choices. It's the non-conscious mind that is the total mind. And all the evidence suggests that our minds are all interconnected. I believe that we are not individual consciousnesses. I believe that we are individuated consciousness. And this is a type of thinking that artificial intelligence, silicon intelligence, will never be able to replicate unless just possibly we introduce quantum effects into the decision-making matrix for AI, at which point if you believe in animism, that's the indwelling of spirit in matter and the interaction between spirit and matter. If you believe that you're not a physical being having a spiritual experience, but rather a spiritual being having a physical experience, well, perhaps consciousness is an emergent property of all matter, of every particle. And perhaps AI will one day be conscious in the meaningful way that we use the word.
That is scary.
Well, you know, the future with artificial intelligence and autonomous decision-making systems is both scary and exciting. But I think it comes down to love or fear. And I would say that your capacity to love others, to have compassion for others, to be kind to others, is limited only by your capacity to love and have compassion and kindness for yourself. I was speaking to somebody last night whose son died 2.5 years ago. He's 25, and we were talking about grief. I believe it's a privilege to feel grief. The strength of your grief the grief is commensurate to the strength of your love for the person that you've lost. And it might not be a person. It might be a version of yourself that you regret disappearing. It might be a life situation. It might be your favorite mug. But whatever it is that you love, you have the capacity to grieve it. You have a connection with it. I think as we move towards the multiplicity of systems that are emerging now, think about things like blockchain, tokenization, crypto, Web3, Web 3.0, you know, the Internet of Things, the interconnected universe of objects exchanging information. We've got the technology to add a sensory system, a nervous system to buildings. We're developing things like the Neuralink that allow us to connect with technology without going through the medium of our senses and our speech, for example. We're moving towards this world where effectively we have free outcomes. We're now at the point where very soon we will have autonomous, humanoid mostly, robots that are superior to us intellectually in every imaginable way, except possibly creativity.
That's
Yeah.
scary to me. Superior.
Why does it scare you?
Because then they will destroy us. I've seen The Matrix, my guy. And Terminator. Doesn't work out that great for us, right?
Right, it's not necessarily true. So I gave a speech for United. I flew in from the World Economic Forum on Thursday night. It was my first time. I didn't get much sleep. I was saying on the way in, I wasn't sure if it was going to be just all the evil people there. And I wasn't sure whether to just pour love into people or slap everyone. I mean, it's got to be one or the other. But it depends if they're asking for it. But I chose the love. And what I found is there are a lot of really wonderful people that are looking for a sense of direction and looking for clarity about how they can turn their ideas into practical, actionable, specific steps that they can take. So we talked about that. And I presented an abbreviated version of a speech I gave for the United Nations about our future potential symbiotic relationship with artificial superintelligence. Symbiotic. Boom. It's alchemy. It's the synthesis. For those of you that are into the tarot, the Empress, the third major arcana, is a fantastic card. So the problem with artificial intelligence is that we have DNA, we have genetic and epigenetic predispositions that influence our behavior. The classic example of this is, if there were a child crying in the room right now, however fascinating my dad jokes are, we would all find it difficult to concentrate because our genes are telling us this is important, pay attention to the baby. Did you know, take a seat, you can lay out across all four of them if you want. If you, yes, what do they call that, Economy Plus? If you, you are capable physically of biting your own finger off, but your reptilian brain, your genes won't let you do it. So the problem we have with artificial intelligence today is that AI doesn't really have DNA. So one of the things a lot of people that are developing AI systems now are looking at is how do we get the DNA in? And at the moment, the DNA takes the form of these massive language models. They take in billions and billions of words, and then they produce output. But it's a bit like putting a billion noodles in a pot, and some of them make letters and words, and eventually you get sentences. We're moving towards semantically aware AI. So an AI knows what a banana is, it knows what a pencil is, it knows what compassion is. And built on that, we're looking at building what they're now calling agentic AI. It's AI agents. And this is where it gets really scary. The speech I gave for the United Nations was called The Tiger in the Room. And my argument was, I normally advocate for love-based choices. If you have a fear-based choice, just do the exact opposite. Treat it like a weather vane. The weather vane points where the wind is coming from. Go that way. But if there were a fully mature tiger in this room right now, fear would be the appropriate emotion. So fear has its place. It's a protection. As a species, we have the predisposition to focus on the wrinkles in the cloth, to focus on the problems, to focus on the crises. But as the Dalai Lama said, happiness comes from appreciation. If you spend just 1 minute a day, 1 minute, 60 seconds, thinking about the things that you're glad about in your life, you'll be shocked by how much happiness you have. Look at us here. I want you to imagine, just for a second actually, this is interesting, and I have an experiment to do with you guys. I want you to imagine, just for fun, just as a thought experiment, that I'm not Maxim, the confused Englishman who's flown over with jet lag, with a gin and tonic waiting outside in the cold for him. It's keeping cool. I want you to imagine that I, in a way, don't exist. In a very meaningful sense, if anyone's ever studied the inner world model, look it up, it's phenomenal. In a very meaningful sense, I don't exist for you outside of yourself. Right now, I only exist within your imagination. All of your senses pass through the circuitry of imagination in your mind, and the culmination of the senses is projected into consciousness. So you're imagining me right now. Hi. You're also imagining that you're sitting in this room. You're half remembering your past. You're half imagining your future. I don't believe our minds really understand much beyond here and now and this. Our minds are not very good at understanding there and then and that. It's an abstraction. It's a sort of logical rationalization. If you ask yourself in this moment, just now in this moment in which you're truly present, the only moment in which you're actually experiencing things, and the only moment in which you can actually do anything, it's the only moment that you're an actor in the original sense of the word. Do you have any problems? Usually with an audience this side, I would guess 2 of you have wind. 5 of you have got sore feet from walking around Sundance. You might have some physical ailments that are immediate. But most of the challenges you're really fixated on are things that you're worried might happen in the future. An old psychologist friend of mine, which by the way you're imagining, an old psychologist friend of mine said, most of our problems are rooted in what we imagine other people are thinking of us. And for what it's worth, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. You don't know how they perceive you. Remember, they're imagining you. You don't know. If I say the word apple, there's nothing you can do about it. The non-conscious mind doesn't do negatives. You're now thinking of an apple. I don't know what kind of apple you're visualizing. Maybe you're thinking of an apple tree in your garden. Maybe you're thinking, I hate apple. Why do people always use apple as an example? It's all happening in your imagination. So I want you to imagine that I'm not here at all. I don't exist. I'm just a sound that's coming into your imagination from the universe. And I want you to breathe. as long as you keep breathing, everything else is a bonus. You owe the universe nothing. The universe owes you nothing. In many ways, I believe we are conduits for love. If you look at the energy healing systems, essentially it's love. You become a channel for love. There's lots of different words people use. I've never honestly understood. I've spent decades. I have all these qualifications and spiritual stuff. I don't really know what high frequency means. I don't know what that means. High frequency, low frequency. I like bass. Every part of the universe is exactly as it should be. Everything. Even the stuff that you can't stand. Lean into that. Do your shadow work. Now, there's a beautiful book written by Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. It's fantastic. He says in there, he quotes the Bible, and he says, Jesus says, only through me can you come to know God. And Yogananda says, this is obviously ridiculous. You can't physically go through the dude. Like what, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, Yogananda's language. He says, you can't physically go through the man. What does it mean? Well, Jesus was a rabbi, apparently, who had achieved Christos consciousness. He wasn't Jesus Christ, he was Jesus the Christ. And a person who achieves Christos consciousness has attained a level of understanding of mutual identification with the other. So you meet somebody, and it's not just that you see a parallel, a connection, an empathic relationship. It's that you see that they are you, and you are them. This is what Alan Watts alludes to when he talks about the entire universe being exactly as it is in order that you can be exactly everything else, and vice versa. They are you. And Yogananda proposes, I think, as I understand it, that if you reach that level of understanding, that you recognize that other people, I think the idea of otherness is so silly, we need to grow up out of that. But the otherness goes away, and you realize that everyone's winging it just like you. And the next stage of development is mutual identification with the all, with every object, with every particle in the universe, the chair you're sitting on, the air you're breathing. It's all you. And Yogananda argues that if you get that understanding that it's all you, you might see God. You might perceive the divine. In Christianity, this is the immanence, the omnipresence of God in every particle in the universe. So what does this have to say about our future? Well, I believe that as a species, where our consciousness is evolving, our capacity for kindness, our capacity for mutual understanding, our recognition that everybody hates it when they run out of coffee. Even those of you who say you don't like coffee, you've got to worry when the coffee cupboard is bare, right? So if you understand the feelings of others and the needs of others, the feelings of yourself, the needs of yourself, the technologies that we are developing today facilitate this type of thinking naturally. It's going to hurt. We're moving towards an era where robots will design robots who will build anything you want for free. They'll mine for the materials, they'll turn it into textiles, metals, you name it. They'll generate the energy. We're building fusion reactors now that are effectively free energy. I know of 2 companies that are offering for sale zero-point energy devices that extract energy from ether directly. They claim they have megawatt-sized versions. I was talking to the development agency in Dubai. I was there recently, and they're interested to buy some. They're like, yeah, we have money. We'll do it. So we're moving towards an era where your AI assistant, your private personal assistant, the AIs that you're working with know you better than you know yourself. They understand empathy, but AIs can already read sentiment in people better than a team of therapists can. It'll read your pupil dilation, your heart rate, the surface electrical tension in your skin. It'll be a cardiogram, the heartbeat in your throat. They can actually, there's an indoor radar system now that is so sensitive, it can read your heartbeat from the movement of the skin on your neck. These AI systems will know everything about your past. They'll look at all the neurolinguistic programming stuff, right? Lower lip size, lower eyelid position, flushing in your cheeks, subvocal stresses, everything. And when you say, I'm upset with my boss, your AI will say, don't you worry about a thing. I have some wine for you. Or whatever it is that you need to hear. And sometimes your AI will say, you are in the wrong. You can be a better person than this. I know that you can. So we will have this symbiotic relationship with AI, and we will no longer need to work. I'm sorry. It's a fairly recent development for us as a species to identify as our occupation. Very recent. We're a couple of 100,000 years old with this genetic makeup, roughly. It's what, maybe 2,000 years? Maybe 400 or 500 years? Maybe less? We started naming people. The second name was their occupation. What do you do? This question comes up, right? I usually say, what do you do with your days and does it make you happy? It catches people off guard. But I believe we will move towards a time where work is optional, but people will work, but they'll work on what they love. We will refocus on self-realization. If you believe you have a soul, wouldn't you like your mask, your being, your public persona to be the purest expression of that true self? Wouldn't that be great? We'll have the time to do it. We will refocus on community. We will refocus on self-realization. And we will have the stress-free opportunity to refocus on love and let go of fear. Whatever your spiritual path, go for it. Whatever your relationship with God, go for it. However you perceive the climb up the sacred mountain, take your path, take your detours, have your attachments, suffer, grind your teeth, shake your fists at the sky, jump up and down. My mother once got a parking ticket. She tore it into pieces and stamped on the pieces. She ended up having to pay double. But she took it pragmatically. And I remember thinking as a child, that is living. Life does not come with a brief. Therefore, unlike the existentialists who believed that you should have existential angst, you might get it wrong, what if you're mistaken, what if you suffer? No. If there is no brief, everything you do is right. But while you may try to avoid the outcomes of your choices, the consequences of your choices, you don't get to evade them. Every choice you make leads to outcomes. And a lot of the choices you make are to do with what you focus your attention on. If individual free will exists in any way, and the jury's out for me on that, but if anything like that exists, it exists in the way you choose to focus your attention. I think the last time I was speaking for you, we touched on this black wolf, white wolf thing. Has anyone heard that? Ancient shamanic story. There's a shaman is telling a story to a little girl, and he says, in the head of every person, there's a black wolf and a white wolf. And the black wolf is all about anger and justice and fear and conflict, aggression. And the white wolf is about love and peace and kindness and forgiveness and growth. And these two wolves have been fighting for eternity, and they're in the head of every person. And the little girl says to the shaman, which wolf wins? And the shaman says, whichever one you feed. You choose if you will focus most of your attention on what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body, the adrenaline, the rush, the conflict, the tension. Our media feeds on that. They get your attention in exchange for that tension. Or choose to recognize that life is going to hurt sometimes, that you're not going to get what you want sometimes. Be honest, you don't even really know why you want it. If you really think it through, you just feel it. You have a logical thing. But if you think about why enough, if you think about why does it matter to me, you'll land on your feelings. Let go of claiming to know what you're doing, and remember nobody else knows either. And we will make technologies that enable us to focus on community, love, compassion, self-realization, great cups of coffee, and a symbiotic relationship with nature. And I'm almost done, but remember that we're related to every living thing on Earth. There is actually only one life on Earth. We share DNA with everything that we have found to date. Everything. Jury's out for me on octopuses because they've got 10 times as much DNA, and those things are wild. But joking aside, you are related to every form of life on Earth because you are life on Earth. So the idea of otherness is just an idea to grow up out of. The question is, can we be one in our words, in our deeds, and in our relationship with ourselves? And can we make that our paradigm? Can we make that the word of the day? Let's start with kindness, because kindness is that key to recognizing that oneness. That's why we should be optimistic about the future.
I would drop this mic, but I don't want to fuck up our AV. Thank you. Wow. No, I love when I can just ask a simple question, and the interviewee can really just take us on a journey. Thank you, my friend. And I feel a little bit better now. I mean, I hope that AI enables us to have the Star Trek future, right? Interstellar travel, food replication, etc.
Can I have a comment on that, just as a technical thing? So we have this problem socioeconomically with what do we do without money, right? We're migrating into universal basic income now. I believe it's done. We've started the process. The next stage is post-money. The next stage is post-scarcity. So most of our economic models are rooted in scarcity. Work that needs to be done that's hard, or material things that are hard to get. There's not that many of them. What do we do when we live in a universe of abundance? And spiritual people have been talking about this idea of believing in abundance for years. I don't know what they mean, honestly. Like, I like the idea of abundance, but sometimes I run out of coffee, and that makes me sad. So you feel it, right? So what do we do societally? What do we do in our socioeconomic landscape? What do we do in our political landscape, where you can't say, well, that chair is this much money because so much work went into it, so many materials went into it that were scarce. The robots will build it. I believe that we will commoditize reputation. This isn't like a social credit thing that they talk about in China, which apparently it isn't really like that in China. The way the scaremongers in the media frighten us, it's not like that really. But if you want to be on the bridge on a starship, there's only so many chairs on the bridge. And if you want to be given the opportunity to sit in one of those chairs and to explore new frontiers and discover new ways of being, you better work pretty hard. You better have absolute integrity. Remember, the key to integrity is not what other people think of you. No, it's not important. What's important is what you think of yourself. Only you know if you have integrity. Only you, really. Your relationship with yourself is what means you shine integrity into the world, or not. But we can talk about body language another day. So reputation, I believe, will be commoditized. It'll be a measure. And if you want to spend your days playing in the park, walking the dog, sitting on the beach, great. The baseline is great. As, I forget the author in Conversations with God, he says, how do you know that in 40 years, somebody might write a poem that changes the lives of millions? So maybe that'll be your contribution, just not today. You're going to do it in a few decades. Your existence is valid automatically. You don't have to be qualified to live. You automatically, if you made it through teething and diapers, you're good. When I was 6, I nearly drowned, actually. It's very interesting. I nearly drowned. My first thought was, how am I going to explain to my mum why I'm wet? Because I definitely should not have been where I was climbing. But my second thought was, oh, I thought I was going to live longer this time. And I just made it through nappies, and we call them nappies in the UK, and teething. Teething was so annoying. And now I'm going to have to do it all over again. And then my brother jumped in and pulled me out, and we came up with a great excuse for why I was wet. But no explanation for the bump on my head where I'd hit the concrete, falling into the water. We don't know why we're here, but we know what our feelings are. Listen to them. And ask yourself every now and then if you agree with your own priorities. You might be surprised. You might discover you don't actually agree with your own priorities. But in time, as a society, as money loses intrinsic value, I mean, it's made up anyway, really, but we will commoditize reputation, and it's that reputation that will give you opportunity by contributing, a true meritocracy. But the baseline only works if you don't have to qualify for your place under the sun. You automatically qualify. Well done, you made it here. Hasn't it been rough? Hasn't it been hard? Hasn't it hurt? Well, thank you for making it this far, because we need you to be exactly you, to do exactly what it is that you do, to have exactly the perspective that you have, to have exactly the experience and associations and attachments and passions that you have, because only you can contribute to the world your unique essence, your unique identity. You are necessary for the whole. So if you're ever wondering if it's worth it, It's kind of none of your business. We need you. Keep going. So, commoditized reputation.
I feel like we need an hour for this conversation. No, but thank you, Maxim. Obviously, it's fucking amazing. And Maxim is also the founder. He's the founder of the Creativity Conference, which is coming up in New York, in Dubai. He's also the founder of the Pajama Party at Cannes. So find Maxim. Maxim, just Maxim. Thank you. Yeah, no, thank you, my friend. Wow.